Can a person that acts immorally truly be happy? Or is immorality incompatible with true happiness? Consider a case discussed in Chapter 9 of Exploring Ethics. Steven Cahn lays out the case of an adulterous physician and his blackmailer as found in the Woody Allen movies Crimes and Misdemeanors. Suppose a man who is happily married and highly respected as a physician makes the mistake of embarking on an affair with an unmarried woman whom he meets while she is working as a flight attendant. When he tries to break off this relationship, she threatens to expose his adultery and thereby wreck his marriage and career. All he has worked for his entire life is at risk. He knows that if the affair is revealed, his wife will divorce him, his children will reject him, and the members of his community will no longer support his medical practice. Instead of being the object of people's admiration, he will be viewed with scorn. In short, his life will be shattered. As the flight attendant is about to take steps that will destroy him, he confides in his brother, who has connections to the criminal underworld. The brother offers to help him by arranging for the flight attendant to be murdered with minimal danger that the crime will be traced to either the physician or his brother. Should the physician consent to the killing? Doing so is clearly immoral, but if all goes as planned, he'll avoid calamity. The physician agrees to the murder, and when it is carried out, the police investigate. They attribute it to a drifter who eventually dies of alcoholism, and the case is closed. The physician's life goes on without further complications from the matter, and years later he is honored at a testimonial dinner where, accompanied by his loving wife and adoring children, he accepts the effusive gratitude of the community for his lifetime of service. Could such a person ever truly be happy? Is there such a thing as a happy immoralist? That's what we're thinking deeply about today. Welcome to the Philosophical Life. Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cluse, founder of the Philosophical Life. As I've discovered, the Philosophical Life is a life of purpose rooted in clear thinking about what contributes to human flourishing. I created the Philosophical Life to help you transform your mind and life through philosophical thinking. Consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell to not miss any future videos. Today is the 9th installment in the Exploring Ethics series. It's a debate between the editor of this text that we're working through, Steven Cahn, and Professor of Law and Philosophy, Jeffrie Murphy. Now, before diving in, what hinges on this debate? Why does the possibility of a happy immoralist count as a threat to morality? If a moral skeptic asks, why be moral? One way of responding is connecting morality to happiness. Most people want to be happy, and moral action often leads to happiness and the avoidance of pain. If I go around hurting people, I'm likely to suffer the pain of broken relationships, damaged trust, and isolation from those I've harmed. There's real psychological cost for most people when they act immorally. This can come in the form of guilt and regret. And such things detract from happiness, so it's a good idea to choose to do what's moral because it's a way to secure more of what you want, namely happiness. The more morality and happiness come apart, the less motivation there is for people to be moral. Now let's take a look at Cahn v. Murphy. I'll step us through what each of them argues, and I'll give you my take in the end. I'd also love to hear what you think. Who do you think makes a better case? Or which position do you find most plausible? Or what do you think about the whole debate itself? Now, Cahn argues for the happy immoralist. Steven Cahn kicks things off with a quote from philosopher Philippa Foot. You might know her from her book, Virtues and Vices, or as being one of the first philosophers to present the trolley problem. Now, if you're interested in the trolley problem, I created for you a free guide that helps you avoid common mistakes in presenting the problem. A link to the guide is in the description below. Foot claims that morality is part of true happiness. Why? Because happiness is deep and fundamental. It's distinct from mere physical pleasure. It includes things like friendship, family bonds, fulfilling work, freedom, and truth. As she says, quote, great happiness, unlike euphoria or even great pleasure, must come from something related to what is deep in human nature and fundamental in human life, end quote. Now, Cahn objects. He He thinks a scrupulous and totally dishonest person can be happy. Imagine someone like Bernie Madoff before his Ponzi scheme was exposed. He had a ton of money, he had fame as a go-to investor, he had a great reputation, and even though he acquired all that through fraud and deception, we can imagine him as self-satisfied. Further, let's imagine he never got caught. Foote would say that version of Bernie Madoff that never gets caught enjoys a lot of pleasure, but he doesn't enjoy true happiness. Cahn responds that this blurs a distinction between what Madoff feels about his life and what we want to have happen to him given his dishonesty. We don't want to see him rewarded for cheating the system and risking people's, in some cases, life savings based on lies and deception. We're unhappy with him. Yet, this is very different from whether he himself is happy. Cahn claims that such a person really is happy, and it's only philosophical sleight of hand, as he says, to claim that Madoff that never gets caught is not really happy. Now let's take a look at how Murphy argues for the unhappy immoralist. Murphy argues that immorality is incompatible with true happiness. He argues that Cahn begs the question. He assumes the issue at stake. We wonder if the immoralist is happy, and Murphy argues that Cahn merely assumes the immoralist is happy. Murphy argues that claiming the immoralist is not happy is not just sleight of hand. Murphy thinks what's going on is legitimate revision of our ordinary language and concepts. Just as Socrates in Plato's Republic argues that a tyrant might be happy in a worldly sense, he's not truly happy in the sense embraced by the wise person. What is that sense? Murphy explains it as, quote, the satisfaction one takes in having a personality wherein all elements required for a fully realized human life are harmoniously integrated. The tyrant and the immoralist don't have this sort of happiness. According to Murphy, and that's an end quote, they lack attributes like, quote, integrity, moral emotions, and the capacity for true friendship, end quote. Thus, Murphy grants the limited form of happiness the immoralist might enjoy, but it's not the full or true sense of happiness. The full form of happiness is captured by the Greek term eudaimonia, which is something like a fully realized or flourishing human life. It isn't just having a lot of fun or pleasurable experiences. Murphy also brings up a distinction from Soren Kierkegaard between temporal versus eternal goods. Temporal goods are vulnerable. They're fragile in that they depend on the opinion of others and they provoke fear. What is the fear? Well, it's a fear that the responses of others are not compatible with happiness. So praise, fame, and being put on a pedestal are such fragile goods. We see this in pop culture all the time. Someone's elevated to a position of reverence, and then when they mess up, when they transgress and it goes public, then they're frequently torn apart and cast aside by culture and industry. The happy immoralist, if he's happy, has this sort of happiness wed to temporal goods. Such goods are accompanied by this fear of being found out or cast aside or losing public trust or the power that comes with it. Lastly, Murphy rhetorically asks, quote, if there is any truth in the idea that love and friendship are among the constituents of the happiest of human lives, must not the immoralist nature, his inability to make and honor binding commitments, forever foreclose these goods to him, end quote? Murphy ends his reply on a note of pity, quote, I find that I pity him because with Plato I think he's simply punished for being the kind of person he is, but why would I pity him if I thought he was truly happy, end quote. The happy immoralist evokes our pity but not our envy. Cahn gets the last in the exchange, and he adds some further challenges to morality. So, he replies to Murphy by way of examples. The first example kicked off this video. It's the adulterous physician that murders his blackmailer. He enjoys a prosperous career and a devoted family and friends and admiration of his community. Isn't he happy? Cahn concedes if you don't think he's happy, then you have to admit comparatively, he's happier than he would have been were he to have been found out. His life that he lived and loved would have been destroyed. Thus, his immorality helped him secure a happy life. Yet, this leaves us with the following question that Cahn identifies. What persuasive reasons, if any, can be offered to demonstrate that in securing his own happiness, the physician acted unwisely? And how we answer this question reveals our moral character. It reveals not only what we take to be part of happiness, but also what we take to be important about the sort of person we become morally. Now, here's the case that Cahn gives. It's a two lives case. Cahn leaves us to wonder who had the wiser life, or who made the wiser choices. First up is the story of Joan. Joan earned a doctoral degree from a first-rate university and sought appointment to a tenure-track position in which she could teach and pursue her research. Unfortunately, she received no offers and reluctantly was about to accept non-academic employment when an unexpected call came inviting her for an interview at a highly attractive school. During her visit, she was told by the dean that the job was hers. The dean, however, had one condition. Joan was expected to teach a particular course each year in which numerous varsity athletes would enroll, and she'd be required to award them all passing grades, even if their work was in every respect unsatisfactory. And only the dean would know of this special arrangement. Joan rejected the position on moral grounds and continued to try to obtain a suitable opportunity in academic life. Never again, however, was she offered a faculty position, and she was forced to pursue a career path that gave her little satisfaction. Her potential as a teacher went unfulfilled, and her planned research was left undone. Throughout her life, she remained embittered. Now let's look at Kate. Kate also earned a doctoral degree from a first-rate university and sought academic appointment to a tenure-track position, which she could teach and pursue her research. She too received no offers and reluctantly was about to accept non-academic employment when an unexpected call came inviting her for an interview at the same school Joan had visited. The dean made Kate the identical offer that had been made to Joan. After weighing the options, Kate accepted the appointment, even though she recognized that doing so would require her to act unethically. Kate went on to a highly successful academic career, became a popular teacher and renowned researcher. She moved to one of the nation's most prestigious universities. Occasionally, she recalled the conditions of her initial appointment, but viewed the actions she had taken as an unfortunate but necessary step on her path to a wonderful life. Joan acted morally but lived unhappily ever after, while Kate acted immorally but lived happily ever after. So here's the dilemma. Which of the two was the wiser? Before sharing a few thoughts with you, I'd love to hear your take on the debate. In the comments section below, go ahead and leave your thoughts about who you think made a more convincing argument. Now, here's my take. Briefly, let me mention what I think. Overall, my worry is that the exchange boils down to two different definitions of happiness. If so, then there's a sense in which Cahn and Murphy are saying things that are mutually compatible, which is pretty uninteresting and not a genuine disagreement. For instance, if you define true happiness as eudaimonia, as Murphy does, then the Madoff that never gets caught, the adulterous physician, and Kate are not truly happy. Their immoral actions preclude them from enjoying deep integration of their lives with the goods thought to make life truly satisfying, such as having integrity, friendships based on truth and trust, and knowing that your success is a result of making moral choices, not the result of cutting corners morally. Yet, if you define happiness as Cahn appears to, then the people in those cases are happy. The immoralists are happy because they enjoy their rewards, relationships, and careers. It doesn't matter that they don't have those deep or fundamental things or that fundamental happiness that Murphy is after. Thus, instead of a genuine disagreement, we end up with a mere verbal dispute. We end up merely taking inventory of how a specific way of defining happiness categorizes various cases. Who do I think gets the better of the exchange? Honestly, it's hard to say. Cahn has given more airtime in making his case, which makes sense because he's the editor of the book, Exploring Ethics, that it appears in. Yet Murphy does more with the short time he's given to make his case. He brings together many different strands and philosophers and shows the interconnections. So if I had to pick, I'd say Murphy did more with less, and Cahn's cases, while tough to clearly diagnose, don't have direct dialectical bite for the reason I mentioned earlier about Murphy just working with a different understanding of the term happiness. Lastly, how would I diagnose who's the wiser, Joan or Kate? Here I tip my hand a bit morally. I tend to favor a virtue theory of morality, so if Kate needs to consistently perform immoral acts of giving student athletes grades they don't earn, then I would argue that dishonesty has become or will become part of her moral character. Now, we all make moral mistakes that don't become part of our moral character. We're not morally perfect. Perhaps she originally accepted the position under unethical terms, then started administering the inflated grades and felt horrible and guilty, and then refused to continue in that capacity at the university. But this is not what happened. According to the case, she had to do this each year and went on to have a long and successful academic career. So she continued the immoral behavior over a sustained period of time. Perhaps she rationalized or justified the immoral grading, but even that would have become part of her larger moral character. We can only speculate what sort of other moral concessions she was willing to make in her life. Thus, I'd argue that Kate is not wiser than Joan. Joan doesn't enjoy as much happiness or success as Kate. In fact, she doesn't really enjoy any, but wisdom and happiness can come apart. I take this to be one of those cases for the reasons I mentioned. If you got something out of this video, please smash the like button and share the video with a philosophical friend. Keep thinking ethically and living wisely. Keep living the philosophical life, my friend, and be well in light of the pandemic. My best wishes to you and yours.